Thank you very much to Sarah for inviting us to be here, and it's really great to talk about an extraordinary project that we've been working on at People Dancing. Before we talk about 11 Million Reasons, I thought that it would be useful for some of you who have probably heard this quite a few times, but just to go over about our ambitions at People Dancing, and just to clarify and just to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing. So People Dancing is the UK's development organisation, a membership body for community and participatory dance. Our vision is a world where it is part of everybody's lives, and by that we mean all dance, all dancers and all dancing. So people dancing in the way that is right for them. We have over 2,500 members, and we're reaching 5,000 partners, dance professionals worldwide. We also, as part of Big Dance, have engaged with 12 million people from 2006. We work collaboratively with the broader dance sector, artists and organisations to enable more people to take part in dance. And that's not just about being a performer, but it's actually about being a participant, it's about being an audience member. We place inclusion, equality and diversity at the heart of all of our work. So, going on to community dance, what does community dance offer? It offers a wide range of opportunities for deaf and disabled people to engage with dance. It's about personal and collective expression, advocacy for disabled people in the wider community, artistic skills, active and healthy leisure activities, and professional opportunities within dance and the arts. At People Dancing, development and planning of work by and for deaf and disabled people continues to be part of our core programmes, as well as embedding the needs of deaf and disabled people within our operational, business development and creative vision. As you heard earlier, there's a new network which is called Dance for Change. It's a new title as from today. So just to explain a little bit about that. So in 2013, People Dancing formed a new alliance of artists and leaders as an activist group to move forward the debate about deaf and disabled people in dance. We have now merged with the National Inclusive Dance Network, together creating a formidable coalition for change, including high-level leadership and knowledge to become an effective advocacy group, helping shape and compelling programme activities that contribute to the ambitions and desires of the partners, identifying and cultivating ambassadors, shaping and help to implement campaigns. And as we heard earlier about Dance Agent for Change and our wonderful Caroline over here, it's about how can we replicate some of those models that are happening in Scotland and the Agent for Change model. And also establishing a national framework for excellence and providing guidance for people who are working in organisations who are wanting to engage in the disability agenda. So, as you're hearing already, there are so many projects out there. There are so many that we could talk about. And what we really want to do today is share a project that we have been working on, and it's still very early in its stages, and it's something that it's really important, and it's a new direction for the way that People Dancing is working, which I'll continue after. Thank you.
Can I play? I'm going to give you I know we've got what I call the physical exhibition here upstairs in the room, and I know that if the wine's up there, you're going to see it. But for the purpose of obviously referring to something, we're going to put the digital version of the exhibition on again, which is something that we will talk about in the fact that we have different formats of 11 Million Reasons, which is fantastic. Okay, so thank you. So you will see the exhibition and the context slides after each image that will tell you a little bit about that. So when I came in post a few years back now, there was already a vision in place by Chris Denton, our executive director, and Ken Bartlett, our creative director at the time, to have a high-profile visible campaign that supported deaf and disabled people who dance. So the idea came about, and in the words of our alliance group that Vanessa referenced, how can we desegregate disabled people dancing from other people dancing? So it was about finding a positive association and something immediately that was recognisable. We wanted to create a campaign that could reach as many people as possible, not just the dance sector, but way beyond that. So this was inspired, for me anyway, by a film that we made in 2013 called Physically Being Me, that's on the internet, should you wish to Google that. And we've had a remarkable amount of hits on that film, and for me it's quite what I would class as quite a non-specific film, so necessarily, but it's been really positive feedback we have from that. And I think what inspired me is that we had Sky's community channel have a 2-year contract with us, that every now and again they would play it on their community channel. And so literally that film has reached the living rooms of people. And so in the same sense with 11 Million Reasons, we really wanted to find something that had that wider reach other than the dance sector. And obviously we wanted to play our part in changing perceptions around that. So we wanted something visual and of high artistic quality, so we chose photography. We liked the cross-art form with dance, and we liked the fact that potentially it was an easy product to distribute. We wanted to do something that we hadn't done before, and that was original in both concept and creation. So we went for iconic dance moments in films. I had about 2 weeks at home and in the office where my job basically was on YouTube Googling iconic dance moments from films. I felt quite guilty at certain times, but it was great fun. So there I was sitting Googling away. But so we chose the iconic dance moments in films, and I think we came up with a long list of about 30 and narrowed that down to the 20 that you see on screen. So as an organisation, historically, we have often led on delivery of networking days, symposiums and provocations. This concept for us enabled us to have a bit of fun and be creative, but yet still in a subtle way have a serious underlying message. We think that worked really well, and particularly in some more of the images than others, and hopefully you can make your own mind about that, which ones those are. So as the producer of the project, what was important in the process of planning? For me, artistic quality was top of that list. It had to be. I wanted to move away from images and particularly films where I personally feel that disabled people are often documented. That's not to say there's not a place for documentary. Of course there is, there absolutely is, and some do fantastic work. But I wanted to see something that was highly artistic. I was inspired by some images that I saw. We did a lot of research. There's an organisation called Models of Diversity, where some of the photographic images were really stunning, but it was about beauty and it was about modelling, and that's obviously not necessarily what our organisation is about. So we wanted to go beyond that. And there was so much importance and at times, I suppose, pressure on that artistic quality. And a great deal of thought went into selecting the scenarios within the films and what would be in that, what would be the potential political message, what would be the creative vision, how would that inflict on the budget, can we do it, etc., etc. I think I bored quite a lot of people overanalyzing things in the office at certain times. So I had some more risky ideas that we decided perhaps let's not go there. I won't share those. I'll share those privately if you really want to know later. But ultimately, we wanted to create 20 high-quality images that resonated with people, made them think, made them question, be inspired, and that sat together as an exhibition that organisations and venues and art centres would want to book or have and be proud of it on their walls, and obviously support diversity programming across the UK and beyond. So again, I said that we spent a lot of time considering every image. How could we fully represent disability in 20 images? Who should be in those pictures and what's the message? And are we being diverse enough within diversity? And then obviously as simple as where is the location? Where's the accessible buildings, and where, how does this happen? So that's, obviously, as you all know on project work, some of that's just logistical stuff that you have to go through on any project. Above all this, the starting point was the scene itself for me, and what that represented and the potential within that. So, for example, I always knew from day one that I wanted to do A Wizard of Oz. It's my favourite film, I love it. But the concept of having that Dorothy the Wizard of Oz with an inaccessible yellow brick road was a really exciting prospect, and again, the artistic image that I had in my head and bringing that through. When you see the Chicago image, for me personally, it's one of my favourite images. It represents 5 strong, beautiful, diverse, kick-ass women, and they're all centre stage, and that for me was really important. So when you get to that image, you'll see exactly what we mean. But obviously, getting that concept of how important artistic vision was and getting people on board with it, you understand. But we're really proud of the results. So we had a range of people in the shoots, again, professional dancers and people from our films that we'd already featured, and then from people from different dance genres and with different skills, and that was important to us, to enable people to see themselves within the work. The people involved in the shoots really brought the images to life. They were the ones, for me, that made the characters and really reimagined those images for what. For example, if I take the image of High School Musical, which I think you've just seen, it's not the most artistic image, it hasn't got particularly sets, it's not in an amazing location, but for me, the energy and the life in that shot, it really encompasses the brief of that High School Musical and the fun that those young people are having. So for me, again, that's a nice shot. Did we engage dancers for images based on their disability? Rightly or wrongly, on some perhaps I did. An example of that is Black Swan. I knew that it would send a potentially political message if that dancer had a certain aesthetic. You may want to judge me on that, it may be an artistic aesthetic decision, but on other shoots it became about availability and the logistics of where somebody lived, and so on. I want to very briefly say that this project impacted some of those dancers on many levels. I had one dancer who hadn't danced since they became disabled, and they always had. Not only did they absolutely enjoy the day on the shoot with all the creative team, they got to speak to professional disabled dancers, and it really inspired their enthusiasm, and she's since taken up dance again. I like that, we like that, because isn't that what it's all about? The shoots happened in December 2014, so nearly a year ago, I can't believe it's nearly a year ago, and January 15. It was over 4 weeks, pretty much for Christmas in the middle. We had 13 days, and we had indoor and outdoor shoots. For access reasons, as much as for myself, the days were a bit shorter, and we were as succinct as possible, and so planning had to really be in place. Obviously, with any project, there was logistical, health and safety, risk assessment stuff that we all absolutely love and enjoy. And so we chose a range of outdoor and indoor locations that were fully accessible. For me, that absolutely was top of the list in terms of just making the days transitional, really, and being making the days as smooth as possible and having the support within those venues that we did. I do remember the most challenging shoot we had was at Bradgate Park, and the car park is in Leicestershire, and the car park is a mile away from the main sort of house where we were, so immediately there was an access issue there for not the people shooting necessarily, but a couple of the creative team. We obviously got our cars up the mile road and what have you when we dodged the ducks and things, but I had to go off and be filmed, and you'll see the wonderful film in a moment, of the making of the exhibition. So I was being filmed for the film, and it was a Sound of Music picture here that lovely Laura Jones was. And I'd gone off to be filming, and I came back, and there she was at the top of this hill, and I thought, oh my God, any second now she's gonna hurl down that, and then the photographer said, no, she's fine, and Laura's going, I'm fine, and anyway, behind that hill is a track that is how she kind of got up. But I suppose the point being is that within the realms of access and the risk assessments and all that, the artists and the dancers that were in the shoots were very much responsible for themselves and really kind of supported the whole process in fantastic ways, and it was well worth it, I think, and you'll think on that picture. So I can't thank the wonderful team enough. That's everybody involved, particularly the participants and the dancers. And again, I've mentioned Sean, so do check out his work if you can. We had great fun on that day. It was really, really good. It's full Monty. So to summarise, the project worked with the majority of people being disabled, over 60 disabled people, in fact, and we have 20 images in 2 formats, with the potential, with more funding, to look at different methods of formats and to look at audio description and perhaps even Braille. It's touring the UK at the moment, with part of our film programme, so some of the films that you will see in building today will be ours, people dancing. And we worked on a relatively small budget actually for this project. Am I allowed to say? Yeah, so it was about £15,000. We finished it. I was so economical. I really was so economical. It was great. But the project has potential to develop further in terms of books, alternate access formats, and Vanessa will talk to you after the film about the vision that we have for 11 Million Reasons. But I just wanted to give you the producer lowdown, if you like, as to how we made it happen, why, and obviously you're seeing the results. That's the Chicago one. So I was trying to pitch that, and I imagine, you know, that, yeah, that's what I had. That's what we had in mind. But then, you know, for me, that's 5 really strong kick-ass women. Okay, so we're going to play you a short film now, which is the making of 11 Million Reasons. When I work out, just sit there. Sorry. So I just want to get the desktop. Okay, so here's the making of 11 Million Reasons.
I love dancing. It gives me more confidence.
I think it's really good because that opportunity, because that so many people don't get to do this like we are.
Dancing that makes me feel really energetic, happy and excited.
11 Million Reasons is a photography project that has 20 or so images with deaf and disabled dancers centre stage within those images. So we're really reimagining those roles.
We're really excited about it. I think kind of any opportunity for our young people to have a platform to promote themselves and their skills and the kind of the agenda of inclusivity in dance, you know, we're kind of delighted to be part of that opportunity.
The whole project is really exciting for us. We're thrilled that we've been asked to take part. I'm really excited that more youth groups and inclusive groups are being asked to be involved in things like this.
The project is really unique. I've never done anything like this before. I mean, I've worked with dancers, but to work with so many disabled dancers, it brings a whole new kind of dynamic to my photography, and it allows me to push boundaries that I've never really thought about doing.
What's been really brilliant about 11 Million Reasons is that we've had fun, we've really enjoyed it, and people from all diversities, from all over the UK have come to the shoots and danced and enjoyed it and have fun. Some of it's tongue-in-cheek and some of it's more serious with a political message, but I think what's really important is that we remember that dance is an enjoyable art form, that it's there to make us either to have health benefits, to feel good about ourselves.
When I dance, it's a mixture of pleasure for myself. I get a very big kick out of it, but I get a bigger kick out of seeing my brother enjoy himself, who's my dance partner.
I didn't have confidence. I couldn't speak to anyone. And I certainly wouldn't do this.
A lot of people who don't understand or appreciate that actually just because you have some form of disability that life continues, and just because you have that disability doesn't mean that you can't continue doing what you've always wanted to do.
This project, for us, is about enabling a platform for some conversations to take place and to make people stop and think in lots of different sectors, not just the dance sector, but public facing as well.
Any project that's got disabled people and dance is great because it just helps to spread the word that more people with disabilities should be dancing.
Any people can dance, even the people in wheelchairs can dance.
And I also think it's important to highlight invisible disabilities, because you look at me and I don't look disabled at all.
It's really important to have disabled people in the limelight and to be seen by the general public, and I think it's quite an exciting project because I think people can connect with it through it being, you know, iconic films, images that they know, and it just puts a twist on it and a change to what they maybe would think.
Result of that, so it will just subtly change perceptions. The general public will have their eyes awakened. There is so much more possibility. It's not just as cut and dried as they think it is.
So hopefully the general public will be able to see what our young people are capable of, and that will kind of break down barriers and just kind of open up dance, which by its very nature is inclusive, to kind of a wider audience.
Everybody should have that opportunity to be on that level, to be artistic, to have that opportunity to express who they are and feel comfortable doing it.
The nature of our society, and I suppose even by the word disability, it's focusing on what you're not able to do. So it'd be really interesting to turn that on its head in a really artistic way.
Through this project, we've seen so many people like shock us. Like even me, it's like, wow, I didn't know you'd be able to do that, and then they just go and put it off like it's nothing.
It sends a very positive and inspiring message to everybody.
It's a strong concept, and I think it will hit people quite hard, and it'll be a good thing for them to understand that we are all just people, whether you're disabled or not.
All in all, 11 million reasons is going to make an impact. It's going to help to make some change.
Anyone can dance, everyone can dance. It's whether you choose to or not.
Okay, so that was the making of, and I think that's really what it does. It brings it to life, and the experiences and the stories and those that have been involved in it. So it's really quite a great film to share. So what's going to happen next with 11 Million Reasons? We are, I'm slightly grey. I'm starting to notice this morning I'm slightly going grey because I'm writing a strategic touring application. And if anybody knows about strategic touring application, they'll know what it's like. So we're working on a strategic touring application, and we're going to be taking it on tour. And it's going to be called 11 Million Reasons to Dance. It's a new model. It's going to be engaging with new partners and venues, and we're going to be developing new local hubs across 6 areas of the country. One being Coventry with Yale over there. And the idea is really to look at how we can bring 11 Million Reasons to life, to take it to the communities, to develop work in those communities, and also work with local dance practitioners, local teachers, local performers, and also to then present work. We're also going to be taking some of the artists that are on the 11 Million Reasons, so Welly and Kate that are here somewhere, and Stopgap, to present their work in those venues as well. So fingers crossed we will get the strategic touring, and it will start in January. Other things just to say is that we really want to make this tour international model. So I think that one of the things, and listening to British Council earlier, it's really important that our models are shared internationally, and they can be a resource for other international partners. And I think there's quite a bit of work that we're doing at People Dancing around the international, not just being about artist and performance work, but how we can explore community and participation work in international settings. And lastly, just to say that it's available for booking. So if you do want it, please come and talk to us. It's available for booking. And yeah, if you want to hear more about the strategic touring, if you want to hear more about how we're going to be developing the work around the performance work as well, then yeah, just come and have a chat with us. So that brings our talk to an end, and what we're going to do now is do some Q&As?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to do that? Yeah? Okay. That was absolutely brilliant. I love that project. It's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing the photographs when we have the wine reception. Okay, so questions to the floor. I have a question. What was your most challenging moment?
Well, I'll just go and get a coffee. I think actually, just disability or not, I think it was the logistics of getting people in a place one day for 8 shoots in one day. So, I think, and it was just making sure that day went really smoothly. There wasn't a particular moment I think, but saying that, it's all coming back. Yeah, it's all coming back. How long have you got? No, we had a Grease lightning shoot and trying to, on a small budget, find a 1950s car. So we ended up using my own car that you saw in the film and making that start because it's a Ford 70 whatever. Yeah, so little tiny thing. So yeah, I wouldn't say there's any specific major thing, thankfully, but yeah, a few logistical issues. 9 o'clock the night before, still trying to find a particular dancer or what have you, but maybe I should have planned a bit better.
I've got a question over here. Can you shout?
Yeah, no, I can shout.
Okay.
I'm just wondering how you might measure the impact of the project, if there are any systems in place.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And if I'm really honest, we need to think about that still. And I think the results of the strategic touring will certainly help us with that, because the plan is to have I'll hand over to Vanessa in a minute, she can tell you about, we have a booth that people can feed back into. But in terms of the exhibition that's on tour now, with limited resources, what we're doing is the usual, as you would with a visual art exhibition, is we have a book that goes out to get feedback. We obviously, on social media, we have feedback and those things, but yeah, it's a really good question that I think we need to sort of sit down. It's very early days in that the product has been made. We're waiting for strategic touring. I think once that happens, that we can actually really start to look at that. I don't know what to say some stuff.
Yeah, just to elaborate on the strategic touring, is that we are working in partnership with Coventry University to look at the quantitative and the qualitative data, and to gather that as we go around the country working on those programmes. And hopefully that'll be a really robust report, which will also feed into the new alliance, so the Dance for Change Alliance. And also, as Louise mentioned, there is this really exciting bit of the programme where it is about how we can sort of capture data and information that in a creative way. So we're working with Redder Theatre Company, who have created a Move Me booth. So you go into a booth and you sort of capture your own iconic moments of the films, and there may be a point where you do your own dance in the booth, but also as part of that you feed back your information, and that captures the data that we require, and also to support venues and partners with their sort of data collection as well. So yeah, so that's the kind of things that we're looking at, and looking at creative ways of doing that.
Just to finalise, because I'm aware it sounds like we're doing nothing, and we're not. It's that every time it does go to a venue, part of the user agreement is that those venues support us in getting that feedback, and I think each venue is slightly different, and the minimum is that it's one of the feedback kind of books, but it's about an open conversation with them as to kind of, and often if it's a one-day event, I'll go along, or somebody from the team will go along, and we'll get kind of just observe and get sort of verbal feedback. But yeah, I think when we get more funding, there will be a structure in place to have a little bit more of an intensive, what is the real impact, particularly the strategic touring, because it's about the engagement programme as well, and what impact the whole of the work has, and then in terms of the participation. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I really like the idea of the dance responses, because it allows people perhaps with a cognitive difference to give a response. Everybody has an option of.
Yeah, absolutely, agreed. Yeah. Thank you.
There's a question up there.
One for each of you. This one's really short. Vanessa, please tell us the other 5 hubs around the country for your strategic touring.
So there's Coventry with the Performing Arts Service. There is Darts in Doncaster. There's Tin Arts in Durham and Middlesbrough. There is... Oh no, we're going to stop. I have been living and breathing this application for about the last however many months, and I've completely had a blockage. Arts NK in Lincolnshire, and there's one more.
No, you always said that, but it's 2 in the northeast.
Yeah, so there's 2 in the northeast. I think that's it.
Thanks. And the one for Louise is, what precisely was the objection to the Chicago shoot? Was it that it was sexist?
I think so. and a little bit cheesy. I think so. I mean, in fairness, it just wasn't for that person, and that's fine. But I think potentially, I think it was more cheesy than.
If that person thinks differently now,
I would love to give them a ring, actually. Yeah, I might do. I mean, it is that thing, isn't it? As an artist or an artistic person or any kind of vision, translating to say we're actually going to do this really tastefully and not.
These guys know, but I have a compliment for that exhibition from my 2-year-old daughter, who looked at Mikkel hanging off Mummy singing Rain. So if my 2-year-old can recognise that is singing Rain, where is the problem with seeing disabled people as dancers?
Absolutely. Although I don't think at 2 or 3 or 4 is a whole other debate, isn't it? But is it 8 that people start to be socially? Anyway. I've just remembered the other one.
Sorry, it's the Brinley in the northwest is the other partner.
I was just interested in terms of the Chicago shoot. I take it you didn't have any similar reactions to the Full Monty shoot, being sexist?
Yeah, good question. We debated actually in the office, like, should we do, and it's that whole thing, and you can go around in a circle, you have those conversations. I think the decision that we made was about tone and appropriateness, and I hope that you agree that in that photograph it was about fun, it wasn't about sex, and absolutely that was kind of way up there in the kind of mindset when we were doing that, to make sure that I'll be honest, I did no, I won't be honest, but yes, we absolutely it was so important that the tone was appropriate and right for that picture, just as much as it would have been for the Chicago. And we had conversations with all of the people that danced in both of those shoots about the sexualisation of it. So in the Chicago shoot, Beth, who I think she was 19 at the time, again, I spoke to her parents about how they felt, and we just had an open and honest conversation, as you would with anybody, about we'll buy our own costume as long as it's black and there's a bit of lace on the sleeves. And it was the same with the Full Monty, about just being tasteful and making that about... Because actually, if you think about the Full Monty and the concept of that film, and that scene in itself, it's not actually about sexualisation, is it? It's about the guys almost liberating themselves and having fun, rather than obviously there are connotations of the sex. Of course, they're stripping. Who am I kidding? But it's absolutely 100% it was taken into consideration.
I just wonder whether you could just say anything more about the engagement that you're seeing as part of the strategic touring, with these different partners.
Yeah. So with strategic touring, I think what's really important is that that audience development is a key part of the application, and looking at audience development, it's about how we're engaging with communities and participants and getting people involved, and also then having the experience to go and see at the exhibition and see the live performance work. In Coventry, we're going to be working with the SEN schools. Is there 9? Yeah, is it 9? 9 of the SEN schools, and we're going to be working with a local dance practitioner who will be supported by Stopgap and Welly and Kate, and we'll have some training with them, and they will be delivering work out in those schools. So that's an example, and we found that in Coventry we felt that it was really established the SEN, schools and the framework, and actually that was the need of the partner, that they really felt that would be a great opportunity. In other areas it's very different. We're working with in Arts NK, who are also a Creative People and Places organisation, and we're working very much in the communities, and we're working across very rural areas. All of the partners, just to say, is that they all have done, we had to do quite a robust audit and mapping exercise with them to see where they felt and where their needs were, and how they could support deaf and disabled people. So that work has already been carried out and was quite interesting. It was also, just maybe to say this, is that when we were looking at our partners, it was also very interesting to hear how many people felt that they already knew what they were doing and they were already presenting work by disabled artists. And it was quite fascinating, those responses when we were emailing and communicating with those venues who already felt that they were doing this kind of thing. Because the other thing, just to say with the strategic touring, is that we're also developing a training programme alongside that. So we're working with Shape Arts to really support the training and the quality and the standards. So yeah, it was very fascinating and also just to think that actually I don't think necessarily we are presenting disabled artists in those venues. When I started to look at it, I was thinking, well, actually, are we really truly doing that?
One of the what I'm curious about is because it's quite, you talk about audience development, but it's audience development for an exhibition, so it's a static piece of work. Like, for example, the SNN group making a performance, is it like a live performance element? Like, where's that coming in and how's that being arrived at?
I was just going to say, yeah, absolutely, there will be performance elements. So we have professional artists who will be delivering sessions with groups or with individuals, and they will do live performance, and then the group itself will create its own piece of work inspired by 11 Million Reasons, and then they will do that live performance. The venues and the organisations who are engaged with strategic touring will then have to make a commitment, and of course they're going to do it because they're on board already, to then programme work by deaf and disabled artists over a certain period of time. What I was going to just say is that it will probably be that each of the different venues or partners will have a slightly different model, because they'll need to do that. Each organisation or partner will have slightly different needs, won't they? Sorry.
Okay, I think we've got time for one more. Was that a question there? No? One more question. One at the back up there.
How did you go about deciding which dancers to use in photo shoots?
The budget played actually quite a large part in that, if I'm honest. In that and availability, because it was a really tight time scale, and it was a weird time of year. It was December, which it's probably my fault for doing it then, but so it was literally we used some people we knew. I was really, really keen to make sure that there were people in there I hadn't met yet, or I didn't know, and it was really important, as we said in the presentation, that it wasn't just professional artists, that it was people who dance vocationally or in a group. So, as anything in life works, you tend to use contacts, and I spoke to different organisations and people said, do you know anybody? I had, for example, with Dorothy Wizard of Oz, I had a real, I knew I wanted somebody in a wheelchair user because I needed it to be in an accessible. Actually, it didn't have to be, but So I think to answer your question, we literally laid out the 20 shots, and we kind of did little sketches or ideas of concepts and we took the original pictures and printed them off from the scenes, and then we just sort of thought about what we needed within those pictures and who could do those, and then it's like anything in life, who's available, who's willing to come here and travel and do this, that and the other. So it's not really answered your question, but some were specific, and I knew I wanted that person that I knew, and others were like, oh, I'm not quite sure, it doesn't, it could be anybody really, and who's available and who wants to. And for me, it was about wanting to be part of it, even more than anything else. Not even talking about money. I had to have people that were fully on board, supported our organisation, supported the concept, because I knew it wouldn't work if people weren't supportive of that. So for me, it was just as important for them to be passionate about being involved as it was about anything else. And I'm a great believer of that as well. The story I mentioned about the person that hadn't danced since they became disabled, that for me has made the whole thing worthwhile. Whatever else happens beyond that, that person is now dancing, and they're considering dancing more regularly, potentially professionally, and that makes my heart sing. me a hippie, but that's what.
I think I've got one question.
Oh, it's a really short one. I was just came into my head. Were they paid, all the participants?
Good question. Some were paid because it sometimes got to a point that I needed a specific skill choreographically. So if you take Dirty Dancing, for example, I had to have experienced dancers, not just Welly, who's in the picture, but obviously the strength in the arms to be able to hold weight and the health and safety. So some, majority weren't.
Not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah, it's and it's
expenses though.
Expenses. Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, people had expenses paid. The majority of people were paid if they were an individual. Put it that way. If they were part of a school group or a youth group, then obviously that differs, and they weren't.
Yeah.
So I can see where you're coming from, but I don't feel like there was anybody that should have been paid that didn't.
No, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if they were dancing for a living, they got paid.
Yeah.
If they were dancing as part of a group that was supported, they probably didn't, but all the expenses are paid because people approached me in the end, and as unfortunately it is, budgets play a role in stuff. But I get where you're coming from.
It's a huge campaign, and by the sounds of things, if you get this strategic touring underway as well, and I suppose in a way, those people in that campaign are potentially making money for your organisation, which I know is doing really good work, but it's that kind of balance as, I suppose, as an artist, it gets quite difficult. And I suppose, I'm not sure, I mean, maybe this is something the law people will talk about, but I don't know if there's any unbalance between disabled artists and being paid and, able-bodied, whatever you want to say.
Yeah. No, I hear you, and I think it is absolutely a topic to debate. Everybody who did get paid got paid exactly the same.
Yeah.
And again, there was no point that just because of the kind of person I am, there was no point that if I felt somebody should have been paid and they weren't, I would have paid them. Because that to me was kind of part of the top priority, really. It was ensuring that nobody was, it's not that I'm not going to use the word exploited, but nobody was kind of, taking advantage of it. But I hear your comments, but I think we acted in a really responsible, appropriate, professional way in that sense.
No, it sounds like a fair balance.
Yeah, I hope so. Good question.
Okay, just coming in from a small legal perspective that I won't go into detail now, but obviously listening to sort of what I've found an absolutely fascinating presentation through sort of my legal eyes, as I always do, and I do the law of copyright, and all the time that I'm listening to you, I'm thinking copyright is so relevant to what you're to what you're doing, particularly as you've got these photographs, they're made available online, you're doing touring, you're doing other things with the it's actually central to what you're doing. And interestingly, copyright is one of the ways in which you can start to sort of think about how revenues or sort of income streams can actually be disseminated amongst sort of different people in the project. So I just put that there, sort of very gently into the conversation. Particularly if you suddenly get success, there are ways of thinking about how sort of return might be shared amongst participants. But I found that an absolutely fabulous session, and as I say, I'm so looking forward to seeing the photographs later on. And I can see so much potential in what you're doing. I thought it was brilliant. Okay, thank you very much indeed.